and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk About Hearing with Lolly Wigall. I'm Lolly Wigall, and today I have one of my favorite people with me, Howard Samuels.
It's great to see you, Lolly.
I know, we haven't seen each other for a long time.
It's been quite a while.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about how we met.
Well, I grew up with normal hearing, and I woke up one day with sudden hearing loss. I had my wife call a local audiologist who said, okay, the next appointment's in 5 weeks. And I thought, this is an emergency. We have to do something faster.
Right.
So my grandmother was a long-term audiologist patient. She brought me to her audiologist, which was kind of far away, and he was 90 years old.
Ready to retire.
That's right. And I got my first hearing aid from him. And less than a month after I had that hearing aid, I lost the rest of the hearing in that ear. And I was able to take advantage of the 30-day trial period and return the hearing aid.
Which is good and not good, because you lost your hearing as a result, not as a result of having the hearing aid, but due to situations.
I looked at the silver lining.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
And that I needed a new audiologist, and I was working near your office. And I just found you in the phone book. We had phone books back in those days.
I know.
and you gave me this an FM hearing aid with a microphone and a radio link to this, and it helped me. It helped me read lips, and it was exhausting. I could do it for about an hour a day, and that was it.
So, and well, it was very tiring. Plus, it was not too small.
It was not convenient. I had it in my hand all the time. I had to put it in people's faces. They thought I was recording them.
Which wasn't good,
No.
especially at a work situation. And I remember you using it at some meetings to try and hear better when people were talking around a round table, and that was very, very difficult for you.
There was actually one nice thing about that. We made a rule. People normally talk at the same time, and people can hear that. But I couldn't hear that. I could only hear if somebody was holding the microphone and talking into it. So the rule was you weren't allowed to talk unless you had my talking stick.
That's a great name for it, talking
stick. The talking stick.
It's almost like a...
That's right. One day, after an hour or so, I was done for the day listening. So I left, and everybody started talking at once. So somebody took a pen and said, this is Howard's talking stick.
Wow.
And they passed it around at the meeting.
So, well, that's great, because that's also a great lesson for other people, that they need to not talk over people.
It is. We have to advocate for ourselves.
That's right. That's right. So tell me what else then happened.
Well, I knew about cochlear implants at that time, and this is...
Well, we first met in '94.
That's right. So that was 20 years ago. They were commercially available. There were some just coming on the market, and I wanted to get one. And at that time, the criteria were you had to have zero benefit from a hearing aid. And I had just a little bit to help me lip read a little bit. They said, sorry, you can't get one.
Things have changed.
They have. There's so much data now to show that they, on the average, will perform at a certain level. And they have guidelines. I think if you do worse than about 40% on the single word list, and some other guidelines, medical guidelines, that you talk to a social worker, the criteria do keep opening up.
Okay. So it's not just based on your hearing loss, it's also based on social skills and how you can adapt to it, because you have to have surgery.
Absolutely. There are many ways that we all adapt. We compensate for our hearing loss. And it's hard to convey to the audiologist or the social worker how you perform in the real world when you're sitting in the office and it's nice and quiet.
And the door's closed, there's no background noise, nobody else is talking, or you're in a soundproof room.
Exactly. Where
sound is deadened. So it's really not a realistic situation.
That's right.
In most audiologists' office.
But the criteria, as I said, have been getting a lot looser, because they see the success that people have with cochlear implants. So I think there's probably not as many people stuck in that rut that I was in when they were a little bit more experimental than they are now.
Right. Did your insurance pay for it?
Well, I had to pay for parking.
That's expensive.
Yeah. No, I had maybe a $25 copay on the first one. I got another one a couple of years later, maybe the copay had gone up to $50. And for the quality of life change, I would, if I could, I would pay for the whole thing.
Okay. Except that it's very expensive, isn't it? Between $30,000 and $50,000 per ear.
I think the hardware is about $30,000 to $50,000 per ear.
Okay, so that doesn't even count the surgeons,
And the surgeries,
hospitals.
that's right. It ends up being close to $100,000.
Wow. Okay. All right. So it's very expensive.
It is.
But because it's an implant, the insurances will pay for it. Most of them.
In general, they do. The question, when I was getting my second implant, the insurance companies had decided, oh, people are beginning to apply for two. You can already hear with one. Why do you need a second one?
Oh.
So I had to actually fight with a lawyer to get them to cover the second one.
Wow. Okay.
And shortly after that, there were a number of cases, and the insurance companies mostly rolled over and said, okay, we'll cover bilateral implants.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because if you have no benefit from a hearing aid, I mean, one criteria is that you have basically no benefit from a hearing aid.
It's a little bit looser now, but
Okay.
you know, right now, I think if I were to sum it up in general, you qualify for an implant if the team at the implant center is confident you will do better with the implant than you do with a hearing aid.
Okay. Because I know I have referred people for implants, because I don't do them. You know, I have a private practice, so you know, you need a hospital, you need surgeons, you need ear, nose, and throat specialists, you need audiologists who really specialize in programming cochlear implants.
You need to do MRI scans or a CT scan. You need the social worker. It's
yes, so it's
yeah.
a whole team, which is great in this day and age of medicine like this, to actually have people talk to each other, a whole team of people, which is great. So how you now have two cochlear implants?
I do. Yeah.
And you brought some
I have a show and tell.
Show and tell. So let's go.
So let's talk. This is a cochlear implant processor, and it looks like a hearing aid on steroids. It's a little bit bigger than your average hearing aid. This is the large battery that comes with different battery sizes. And
I'm going to interrupt you. Is the battery size have anything to do with the output, the power output?
No power output. It's just how long it lasts before you have to change the battery.
Okay, so how long do your batteries last?
I use the small one, and they last about 12 to 14 hours. So I don't get through the whole day.
Okay.
But I go to work, and when I come home, I change the batteries, and I'm good for the rest of the day.
Okay. All right. All right.
They also have, you can use the button cell batteries, which are probably more expensive than the rechargeable. These are rechargeable batteries.
Okay.
But they last several days. So I use those when I'm traveling, or I keep some on hand in case the power goes out.
Okay. So you have to be prepared for the battery being,
That's right.
being exhausted, so to speak.
There are lots of accessories. There's the charging station. There's the hearing aid dryer thing that I use sometimes in the summer.
Okay,
Not
because
as much
of the
as I should.
humidity. It takes out the humidity out of the hearing aid.
So on a hearing aid, with a behind-the-ear hearing aid, the microphone is usually up at the top here.
Yes.
And then coming out the front is the speaker tube. So the sound goes into the hearing aid, and then there's a speaker, and it comes out, it goes into your ear. So I want to ask you, have you had patients who have had the same type of hearing aid in a behind-the-ear format and also an in-the-canal or in-the-ear format, the same basic hearing aid? Do they have those?
Yes. Yes, they do.
Okay.
Yes.
And what is the sound quality like between the two?
Well, now the latest thing is having a receiver in the ear on the behind-the-ear hearing aids.
Okay.
So basically, if you have an in-the-ear hearing aid, the receiver is already in the ear because it's a custom device.
Okay.
On the behind-the-ear now, that's called receiver in the ear, or RIC, or in the canal, RIC. The receiver is also in the canal. So you have very similar sound. The behind-the-ear one, you can get different colors.
Okay.
So you can get red, blue, green, yellow, silver, gray, black,
Sure.
etc. And they're probably a little more invisible because the wire is so thin.
They are. I've seen those.
Yes. So with the receiver going in the ear, they're pretty invisible.
Okay. So what I was really asking about, though, was the location of the microphone.
Right.
Because on the behind the ear, even in the receiver in the ear, the microphone's
it's on the
up
top.
here.
Correct.
And in the canal or in the ear, the microphone is right here.
Correct.
So do people hear differently with those, or they?
I haven't noticed. I think most people are happy. Part of it is just a choice of what they prefer for style, to what it looks like. I would say the sound quality is pretty similar.
Okay. So these processors have a microphone in the same place as the hearing aid. In fact, they have two.
So you can get more directionality.
You can use the two for focusing, right, in a very noisy situation. But what makes this different than a hearing aid is there's a microphone right here.
Wow.
And it's right at the entrance to my ear canal.
That's wonderful.
So it uses my ears to focus normally.
Okay.
And when I use the phone, on a hearing aid, normally you have to put the phone up here. Even if you use a telecoil, you have to find the sweet spot. But when I use the phone, I just put it up to my ear.
Okay.
The way a normal person with normal hearing does.
Right. Okay, that's great.
And when I use headphones, I wear them the same way.
Okay, that's great.
I have a headset at work. I just put it on.
And then you can hear and talk on the phone.
That's right.
That's great. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. So the way it works is the sound goes in through the microphone, whatever microphone you're using, and this is the processor, and we have the battery providing the power. And I didn't bring the whole setup here, but there's a cable. Of course, we have color choices too.
You're like my husband. I got him beige hearing aids. He didn't want them. He wanted black because it's high tech.
Okay, well, we have black, and I chose a slightly different color for my headpiece. So the sound is now, it's not sound anymore. It's all electronic digital signals. It goes up through the wire to this coil, and there's a magnet which aligns it with my internal implant. And the sound goes into the internal implant and then electrically stimulates the nerve in my cochlea directly. So there's no feedback, there's no whistling, it never turns into sound again. And that's one of the great things about cochlear implants. I used to get the whistling.
Yes.
And I didn't hear it, but everybody else did.
And they'd say, Howard, you're whistling.
That's
you're
right.
Whistling.
And it was all the time. So here's my next show and tell exhibit. This is the actual implant, the part that goes in your head. It's not brain surgery. It's actually outpatient surgery. Most people go home the same day.
Amazing.
I stayed overnight just because I'm a wimp.
Well, you talked the doctors into letting you stay overnight. Nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
Did they do both of them in one time?
I did one, and a year and a half later, I got the second. These days, it's pretty common to do both at the same time.
Wow.
So this part here goes on the outside of your skull, and they make a recess in the skull in the surface, so it stays in place, and it goes underneath the skin. So as I said, that's not brain surgery, and this is the little electrode array, and it's coiled up right here it gets threaded into your cochlea. Wow. So this is the magnet that's my headpiece is attached to. There's a coil here, and that's where the sound gets into this processor inside this can. And information from the processor itself comes back out. So there's a serial number. It says, oh, this is Howard's implant. I'll work with it. It's not somebody else's by accident.
So they're paired.
They're paired. It used to be also that if you put them on the wrong ear, it knew and it wouldn't turn on. Okay. Now,
Aren't computers wonderful?
Well, it's better now. I have two, and both my sets of programs are stored on each processor. So if I put them on the opposite ear, it says, oh, now I'm on Howard's left ear. I'll use those programs.
So it's smart enough to know which ear it's on.
Absolutely.
Well, they say there's more computer power in a hearing aid today, one hearing aid, than NASA had when they sent the man to the moon.
Absolutely. It's incredible.
It is incredible.
Yeah.
And much tinier.
These processors now actually have all the electronics for a cochlear implant in it, but they also have a complete high-end hearing aid with all the wireless and Bluetooth functions. So one example is I can hold the phone up to one ear, and the sound is streamed over to the other ear. You're familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the Bluetooth technologies, which is great. So you're hearing, you actually get an advantage over people with normal hearing.
Absolutely.
Because you're hearing in both ears simultaneously.
I can make calls where people with normal hearing, I see them do this, and they can't hear.
Right, because it's so noisy or whatever. That's great.
And if even that's too noisy, I have a Bluetooth gateway device. I put it around my neck, and I can turn off all the outside sound entirely. And the phone is paired to this, and I just keep the phone in my pocket, and I can talk with no wires going up to my head.
So that's your cell phone?
That's right.
So
that's right, my cell phone or my computer.
How about your car?
On my car, I have my cell phone paired to the car, and it comes over the speakers. In fact, last week I brought my car in for its inspection, and my plan was I would drop it off at the inspection and wait at the gas station and call into work for a conference call. Now, just the concept of that is amazing when I couldn't even have a conversation one-on-one before I had my implants.
Wow.
So I dialed in, and I have this because I figured I'd be on a noisy street. And I dialed into the conference call, and I could see that the call went through, and I couldn't hear. And I was trying, and I called a couple of times. Then I realized that my phone was paired to my car, and the guy doing the inspection was probably listening to the conference call.
And going, what is going on? What is going on?
That's right.
Well, that's only if your car was on, too.
It only had to be that situation. It was near me, and it was on because somebody was working on it. Exactly.
Oh, what a hoot. What a hoot. So wonderful stuff. Now, you also said you have a website where you share information.
I do.
What's your website?
I'm on a team of people that maintains the website cochlearimplanthelp.com, all one word. We have information on things that qualification for cochlear implants, what it's like to prepare for surgery, what to expect, the rehabilitation, which is extremely important. When you get your cochlear implant, it's not like eyeglasses where you say, yep, that's 20/20 now. I can read at the right distance. You hear this electronic noise, and it takes a while to learn how to interpret it.
Okay. So how was it when you first got them? What did the speech sound like?
I was in the activation room with two audiologists, my wife, her mother who was visiting from Japan, and a doctor observing from China. So it was a crowded, small room. And they did the normal testing and the beeps and this and that. Then they turned on the microphone, and the audiologist was talking to me, and I could see her lips move, and I heard all this electronic sounds, and it was kind of synchronized with her lips. But I could understand what she was saying.
Wow!
And right out of the box, I had no problem understanding her. I remember saying, the sounds don't make any sense. They don't sound like speech, but I understand you. And over the next 15 minutes, she and the other audiologist were bouncing back and forth. They wanted to keep the sound coming in right at first, talking to me, and they were very excited. I was doing really well. And they said, at one point, they said, what do you hope to do with your implant? What do you hope to get out of the implant? And I said, someday I'd like to be able to understand Japanese again. And they said, well, try it now.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And my mother-in-law said something to me in Japanese, and I understood her.
Wow.
It was unbelievable.
Wow. Wow. So that's great. And you could understand your children?
I could understand my children. They sounded like Darth Vader. Voices sound different. You know, the first one sounded like Darth Vader, which is kind of unusual. The second one was more typical. It was more chipmunks, like Alvin and the Chipmunks, because real chipmunks don't talk.
That's a shock.
I didn't mean to ruin it for you.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. But I've been using both together for so long at this point that voices sound completely natural to me. Okay. And things get better. I got a software upgrade about the same time that I got my second implant, which made a huge difference for music.
Now, can they just, like we do on our computers, just an update?
Absolutely. You go to the audiologist, they run a wire from the processor to the computer, and you get an upgrade.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you get notification when an upgrade is available?
They do send us emails and mails, but because my website, I usually find out before that.
Yes. So have people written into you? What kind of questions have they asked you on your website?
Actually, the questions are, the website was formed out of a desire to answer the questions before they were asked. I'm also a mentor for people who are on the journey to get cochlear implants, and so many people ask the same questions. Well, for example, the sound quality, a big concern is, I heard it doesn't sound natural. And it's true to a large extent. But you can hear versus where they are before is not being able to hear.
Right, right.
But everybody's concerned, focused about the sound quality.
Okay.
So I answer a lot of the questions on the website.
Okay.
And we did at some point, we initially had questions and people could put comments on the website, but it's not a community where people talk to each other, so we turn those off. And there are so many forums online on Facebook. There's general cochlear implant forums. There's one for parents of kids with cochlear implants. There are forums for each manufacturer. The manufacturers have their own websites outside of Facebook. There are so many places where people can talk to each other.
Okay.
That this is more, the website is more an information source.
Okay, yeah. And also I think it'd be hard to maintain because you got to monitor what people are saying and you don't want certain things up on your website.
It is an awful lot of work, and that's why, that's exactly why.
Right, right. And you work full-time.
It does seem to cut into my time spent on cochlear implant help, yes.
So what is your profession?
I'm an engineer. I'm an electrical engineer. I make accelerometers for a living. They measure gravity. They measure the crash in your car. They tell the airbag when to come out. They tell your phone when it does portrait and landscape. It does all that.
Wow.
So I look at the cochlear implants from a technology perspective.
Right, right.
Not everybody's the same.
Right. So, because you understand a lot of the electronics that go into this, and have you been able to give feedback to the manufacturers? I do. Because of my relationship as a mentor with one, I participate in clinical trials for the FDA. I do give feedback in terms of things that I think might be potential improvements. And I've also filed a couple of patents in the field, patent applications in the field for hearing instruments. Good for you. You're a smart cookie. I knew that anyway.
It's a lot of fun. I actually would like to show a different kind of processor.
Yes.
Because a lot of babies now are getting implants typically around 12 months and sometimes even earlier. And they might get 2 implants. And it's pretty hard to keep something on a baby's ear when they're that young. Even hearing aids, it's very difficult.
Because their ears are very soft.
That's right, and very small.
Yes.
So this one is the same type of processor electronics, but it's off the ear, and you can clip it onto your shirt. A lot of parents sew pockets into the baby's clothes, and it does have the controls for the volume and the sensitivity and so on, but you can actually just take the controls off. See if I can do this. Oh, sorry. You take the controls off after you've set it all up. You have this little cover like this. It's a lot smaller, and it's waterproof.
Oh, my.
So baby goes into the bath, and you can talk to the baby in the bath. It's fantastic.
That is fantastic, because bath time with little kids is one of the most wonderful times.
When I came home from work, my wife, of course, she was exhausted from taking care of the kids. She said, all right, your job, give them a bath. And that was the time I spent with them. Of course, they can hear, they didn't need this, and I was the one who couldn't hear.
Right, right.
But it would have been nice to be able to talk to them in the bath.
Right, right. That's great. Wow. So you mentioned something about that with the new processors, music is better?
That was actually a software upgrade. So the electrodes inside the cochlea, there's only a couple dozen at the most, depending on the implant that you have, compared to how many hair cells?
Oh, I have no idea how many hair cells.
10,000.
At least.
At least 10,000, right. Yeah. So it's like having a couple dozen piano keys, which is not really enough for music. And the software upgrade sort of said, well, if you have electrodes here and here, and this is a lower frequency and this is a higher frequency, they can sort of focus in between at different locations along there to make more pitches.
So they almost transpose some of the music.
Well, no, it's not that they're not like a frequency transposing hearing aid.
Okay.
It's if you only had, you know, a middle C and the next C up on your piano keyboard, and there's a note that's in the middle, it would put a little bit of this and a little bit of that and get the right pitch.
Okay.
So it mixes them.
Okay, so it does mix them and it kind of projects what may be in there.
That's right.
So you get a fuller sound, basically.
It interpolates sound. It's more rich. I hear harmony and melody.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which is great for, because with hearing aids it was a huge thing.
Well, music wasn't even an option.
Right.
It wasn't an option.
Right, but on the newer hearing aids you can now have a music program that literally sends every frequency in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So you get a much fuller, richer sound, which is great. So, wow.
Yeah.
This is wonderful.
Well,
anything else? Because we just have about another minute or two.
Well, I'd like to ask you, how am I interacting with you compared to when I saw you with my hearing aid?
I would say you're much more engaged. You're hearing me very well. I mean, I am looking at you and it's a nice quiet situation, but I tend to do that anyway. But I don't see you struggling. Your face is relaxed.
Exactly.
You are hearing and being very social and being part of the conversation, which is great.
It doesn't give me hearing. It allows me to participate in life.
That's right, which is wonderful. Thank you very much. We've been trying to get this together and we finally did it. So thank you very much.
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for watching us, and hope to see you on the next episode.